Hey, and welcome to the DC Stewart Show. My name is Derek Stewart, and I'm your host once again today on Tuesday, October 8th. I just wanted to bring some news to your attention this morning. We had an incident that happened last night where an NFL head coach, Robert Sala, for the New York Jets got fired. This morning, he was let go by the owner, Woody Johnson, and the owner kind of came to the conclusion that it wasn't working since Salah was 2-3 this year. To give you a little bit of history on, how it probably all built up to this point, because Salah has been with the Jets for about 4 years. They wanted to get a quarterback in there because they thought that the quarterback was the missing piece that they needed to get to the promised land, which was playoffs, and make a run into the playoffs to go ahead and try to reach the Super Bowl. The Jets haven't been to the Super Bowl since the 60s. They've had good teams in the 80s. They had pretty decent teams in the 90s. I remember as far back as when Richard Todd and Freeman McNeil, Wesley Walker, Mark Gastineau. I can keep going on and on with the history of the team, although I don't follow New York. Uh, that franchise has pretty much had a lot of obstacles in front of them over the years where they have not had the right formula to get there. When Rex Ryan was the head coach, they got really kind of close because they had some good teams back then, especially defenses, because that's Rex Ryan's forte is defenses. And the bottom line is these owners, they do what they want to do. I mean, they own the teams. They're billionaires, and they don't let anything dictate or any individual dictate to them how they run their teams. I'm pretty sure that the owner, Woody Johnson, just said that, I want to make this change now, although it's very unusual that they make a change in the middle of the year. Since we're right at kind of mid-season, it must have been something where he just wanted to immediately try to make an impact where the team can be sparked under an interim coach who was Jeff Ulbrich, which I believe he was the defensive coordinator for the Jets. It's very unfortunate for Robert Sala, because I think he's a really decent coach. I'm not saying he's world class or anything like that, but he's a really decent coach. The guy is a defensive minded coach. He knows his defenses. His resume pretty much speaks for that, from the San Francisco 49ers, where he put together some defenses, boy. With I mean, those defenses was just, they were so hardcore when it came to allowing even 1 or 2 yards, with Fred Warner, who was a linebacker, leading them. That the San Francisco 49ers, when Robert Sala was there, was dead solid with defense. So he takes this job 4 years ago after Woody Johnson fired Adam Gase, who was a complete disaster all over the NFL as a head coach. I don't even know why Johnson hired Gase in the first place, because he had got fired in Miami, and then all of a sudden the guy, resurfaces in New York. I thought he was a lousy coach when he was at Miami. He kept that hat down over his eyes, and just I didn't feel good about him when he was in Miami. But Saleh took the job, and it's always a first opportunity for a lot of people, where you might not get another opportunity to be a head coach if you don't take an opportunity that's offered to you at that time. And Saleh took that opportunity. I did notice on First Take this morning they had a bunch of different uh, commentators on there giving their opinions on why they thought Saleh got fired. There were several that said Aaron Rodgers, who was a quarterback, could have been the determining factor. I don't believe that. I don't think Aaron Rodgers had anything to do with it. I think just the poor play from the team for the first 5 games, and they've so far only won 2 games with all of the expectations that was running for the New York Jets this year to try to go to the playoffs. They're in the AFC East, which has got New England, Miami, the Buffalo Bills, and Indianapolis Colts. You know, I think the Bills have pretty much ruled the AFC East over the last, I would say, at least 8 to 9 to 10 years. Because Buffalo, they have some really good players on their team. They got a solid defense. The coach Sean McDermott, I think he's a good coach. I think he's a solid coach. I think he care about his players. Although he might be on the hot seat too this year, I wouldn't, if I was him, I wouldn't be comfortable because with all of the stuff that goes on in the NFL at that level, these owners, they may have drinks with you, sit and eat dinner with you, and play golf and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, wins is what counts. Losses is what don't count. They don't. People at that level who own professional franchises, they want to win. They just don't want to hear any excuses. They'll try to get the tools you need to win, but if you can't win, they'll figure out how to get rid of you. Because that's just a business. It's just like any other business. It's a results driven business, and if you're not performing up to their expectations, and some of those expectations might not be reasonable expectations. They may be expectations to say, look, I want you to do this, but that might not be possible. But they dump that in your lap to go figure it out. I've been there, done that myself. I worked, in management before, and, I got all of these different expectations placed upon me, and I wasn't given sometimes the tools to get them done. And I just had to kind of, operate to the tune that I was going to get it done no matter what it took. I might not have had the tools I needed, but I got it done. Unfortunately for Salah, he didn't have all of the necessary things in place to make that team a lot better than they are because they've sputtered over the last 2 weeks. Last year, at the beginning of the year, they had a lot of high expectations. Things looked pretty bright for them because they were able to bring in Aaron Rodgers and, have him, who is a Hall of Famer for sure. He's a Super Bowl champion, um, four-time most valuable player in NFL. Rodgers is a really good player, but you have to ask yourself, is he at the end of his career? I mean, that's something that he would have to determine along with others around him within that organization. I don't think he's finished. I think he's got a lot left in his tank. Seemed like he followed the same suit that Brett Favre followed when he left Green Bay, because Rodgers did play for Green Bay, and he left Green Bay to go to New York. And I was thinking he was going to end up in Denver, but he didn't. The Jets offered him, I guess, a package that he just couldn't refuse. So he decided to go to New York. Last year, he tore his Achilles heel in the first game of the year. He tore his Achilles, and then he never was able to recover from that because it takes about a year, and even sometimes longer, to recover from Achilles injury. So he came back this year, and the offense is really not gelling like like I guess Woody Johnson expected, and he was let go. So I mean, one of the analysts on First Take said this morning, Dominique Foxworthy, he said, look, Robert Sala can rest now. You don't have any more of that stress on his plate, about how they're going to figure out how to get this win, or how they're going to figure out how to, you know, get to this point, at the level that they're at. It's just, he shouldn't have that pressure on him. And he can take time off now, spend time with his family until the rest of the off season. And then, once the season comes back around, there's going to be a lot of openings, I'm pretty sure, even at head coaching level next year in the NFL, because they do have a Black Monday, which is today, or the day after the regular season, which is a Sunday. So that Monday, they call it Black Monday, where owners tend to say, look, this isn't working. Want to go with a different direction, and they hire new coaches. Usually new coaches bring in their own staffs, or they bring in people that they know that they work with, and that makes sense because that's just how we as human beings operate. We operate around people we feel like we can trust, as opposed to somebody we feel like we might not can trust, and from a different group. So I just wanted to report that this morning. That's kind of most of the news for the NFL. I wanted to go kind of like to high school a little bit and talk about high school because I look into high school. I cover games here in Southern California. Um, basically, I'm going to read off the top 10 high schools in technically the country right now, with Mater Day leading the way, and they've been leading the way ever since the season started. Mater Day is a private school based in Santa Ana, California, very much like a college program. I would say it is a college program because that's the way they pump out talent. Good thing about schools like Mater Day is they can go pretty much anywhere and recruit players. I mean, and bring them in. It's not like a restrictive district system that exists in the public school system where if I wanted to go play in another district, I would have to live in that district. And the good thing for private schools is they can literally pretty much go all over town, even probably out of state. I've heard of cases where Mater Dei has had players from other states come to this state. I don't know the rules. I don't know what particular things that they have to go through to get those players, but they somehow get those players and they bring them in. Number two, St. John Bosco. They are right behind Mater Dei. St. John Bosco is another Southern California school based in Bellflower, California. They've had a really good team. I mean, their teams have pretty much matched Mater Dei's teams, and kind of like maybe every other year they kind of switch off with who wins against each other. Bosco has some really famous players as well as Mater Dei. They usually put out five or six guys to Division 1 schools, CFP schools that go to the playoffs and stuff. Those players are 5-star blue chipper players. And the good thing that's coming up is Bosco has got to play Mater Dei in Santa Ana, and I believe it's on October 25th. I'm going to try to go to that game and cover that game because I really would like to see who wins that game. So that will be the new number one. I mean, or if Mater Dei wins, they would stay number one. Number three is Milton, Georgia. Number four is Duncanville, Texas. Number five is Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. Another great program. Bishop Gorman's a private school, and they have a lot of good players that came out of Bishop Gorman. Muhammad Ali's great grandson played at Bishop Gorman. So that's just to name a few players, and Dorian Thompson Robinson, the ex quarterback for UCLA, which is a stud. And I think he's in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns right now. He played at Bishop Gorman. Um, After Bishop Gorman at number six is IMG Academy. They're in Bradenton, Florida, which is more so West Coast Florida. Bradenton is a really nice area, and that school is really nice as well. So far they've lost one game though. The first top four teams are still undefeated that I named off earlier, and you have Carrollton, Georgia, and you have North Shore, Texas, St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, and Mission Viejo in Southern California. And Mission Viejo is in between Los Angeles and San Diego, and they've always had good players coming out of there as well. Mission Viejo, and I want to say back in the late 80s, early 90s, because he's not that old. He's probably a little bit younger than me. Is Tar Marinovich played at Mission Viejo. He's kind of one of the most noticeable players that I can remember played at that school. So, with that said, those are the rankings so far. Um, I usually try to cover teams here locally, in the South Bay area, which is in Los Angeles, south of the city. A lot of beach cities. This way, you have San Pedro, you have Long Beach, you have Torrance, more so, on the southern north end, and you have schools in Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, and Manhattan Beach. And all of those areas tend to put out the players that end up going to schools in those areas. North High School in Torrance, that's another good program. Yeah, Johnny and Chad Morton, they played at that school. Um, it's a really good school, great facilities, just like all of these schools that I mentioned. They have super top facilities where the players can work out, and the fields and their home fields and their practice fields. The only thing a lot of these schools don't have is indoor practice fields, and I'm pretty sure they're working on that. So, with all of that said, in 2 weeks, I'm going to try to cover Gardena High School versus Carson. Gardena is undefeated so far, and the two schools I would probably say is about maybe 20 minutes apart, with Gardena being a next door neighbor, kind of to Carson, with Harbor City resting in the middle of the two. And those two teams, that's going to be a battle, because I know Gardena is a dominant team, and I know Carson. They just had a big win over San Pedro uh, this past week, which I covered that game. It was Carson's homecoming, and Carson has some really really good players. I mean, and the coaching staff is one of the best I've seen, with Mike Christensen being a top coach, in my opinion. I mean, Mike Christensen really, brought that program back, because Carson has a lot of history, and with all of that history, they hit a snag and they hit a slump over the years, and they brought him back in because this is his second tenure at Carson, and he's a coach's coach. I mean, he lets his assistant coaches coach the team. I mean, he's literally a field general, where if he needs to get involved, he gets involved, kind of like what you see on TV with the college programs and with the professional programs. Christensen is just that skilled at being able to motivate his players, but he let his coaches coach his players. So that's really special. I'm going to kind of showcase, hopefully, a couple of players from each team. As I said again, Carson is on a bye week this week, so they don't play this week. But I'm going to try to get a couple of guys from Carson and from Gardena to join the podcast and talk a little bit about, their teams, and where their teams are right now, where their teams are going, and we'll go from there. Chris Fields the third, which is Carson's sophomore quarterback, guy plays like he's a senior, talented, very smart. I mean, he makes all the right decisions. I have not seen him make a lot of bad mistakes in the games that I've covered at Carson. So, with all of that said, Chris Fields the third is definitely headed in the right direction when it comes to, working toward getting better, because he'll be back 2 years, and that's a plus for Carson. Another one is Cameron Hurst, a running back for Carson, and he plays cornerback too. Little bit undersized right now, but the guy's size, he pretty much, the way he runs and the angry manner that he runs in, and his cutback skills, to me reminds me, and I'm gonna go ahead and compare this right now to Barry Sanders, because he's a little bit of scat back, which once he hit a hole, I mean, he literally can change gears, while he's moving, in terms of him running straight or being able to juke a player. Um, Cameron Hurst is definitely going places as well. Troy Taulua, who's a safety for Carson, super talented. He's a ball hawk back there in that backfield and that secondary for Carson. And Carson's a young team. And I'm talking a little bit more about Carson because I cover Carson a little bit more than these other schools. And the potential for Carson to really, really win the Marine division, uh, the the Marine city section division is really important over the next few years, because that will reestablish Carson as one of the great teams here in Los Angeles. So I'll be kind of, reporting back and updating information. You can check out my website, www.dcstewartshowpodcast.com. The site is still undergoing some upgrades. We're adding new content, taking old content down. So you might, if you decide to go over there, you might see some content that's not updated, but that content is in the process of getting changed and updated. We have a lot of good things that's happening with me and Isaiah, who's my co-host at DC Stewart Show podcast. Isaiah is a special guy. We grew up together in Florida from Miami, and we have been talking about doing a podcast probably for the last 5 years, and neither one of us could ever come up with enough energy, let's just say energy, and desire to do it until now. And now is better than never. That's the way I look at it. So me and Isaiah did a podcast last night. I'm going to be putting all that content out on social media. You can go over to our Instagram page. You can go over to our Facebook page, and you can go over to our YouTube page. And we're constantly updating information in those social media outlets as well as Twitter. I'm going to be putting a bunch of stuff on Twitter as well. So, if you like what we're doing, hit that like button, follow us. We much appreciate if you subscribe to us. We're going to be having some giveaways for hats and T-shirts down the pipeline. I'll be covering other sports as well. High school sports is kind of like my passion now. And I'm going to cover all of the high school sports that I can cover, from basketball to baseball, because I really like baseball. As you can see, I got my Dodgers shirt on, and the Dodgers is one of the hottest teams in baseball right now, with Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts. I can't wait till Freddie Freeman comes back, because Freddie Freeman's a stud too, and Toscar Hernandez. I hope I pronounced that right. He's a super good player, and I could just go on and on. But one thing I can say is they have a really solid team, got a good coach, Dave Roberts, and they're going to be very competitive. So you will hear me, in and out occasionally talking about the Dodgers, because I do go to a game once a year with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I'm kind of a lifelong fan of the Dodgers right now. I've been living in Los Angeles for 32 years. So, anyway, thanks for joining me today. And I will be doing more podcasts when time permits, along with Isaiah. And we'll be talking about some really, really important things about sports, and just, how life parallels sports, and how it builds character in young men and in young women, to come up and be team players. And if you're in an individual sport, still to show you how you can keep that passion and you can attain or accomplish whatever you want to accomplish in life. America is the best country in the world to do it in. There's no place like the United States of America. I love this country, born, raised here. And again, you know, at the end of the day, America has its own issues, but they don't have issues compared to the rest of the world or what they're dealing with. So thank you. God bless. Hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll be back at you very soon. I'll be talking to you soon.